There are three animals living inside your mind right now: a squirrel, an owl, and an elephant. Sounds crazy, right? Like, Jen, you lost your mind. But once you understand what each of them does, you'll finally see why you think the way you think and why it might be the very reason your salon has plateaued. And here's the wild part is when you learn how to train them, you can literally rewire your results. This is the same mental framework that took many teams from confusion to clarity and has helped salons scale faster without experiencing burnout. So stay with me because at the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to control the three animals in your mind and use them to grow your salon, you and your team's income, and your peace. All right. So, have you ever watched a squirrel? They're hilarious, but also kind of genius. All fall long, they're out there hustling, grabbing acorns, burying them everywhere, like little furry entrepreneurs storing up for the winter. And some squirrels hide up to 10,000 acorns in one season. Guess what, you guys? They remember most of them, where they hide them, but not all of them. And here's the crazy part: the ones they forget, those are the ones that become forest. Think about that. Lost acorns become new trees. But we also know that not all acorns are created equal. You know, a squirrel, you're wondering, Jen, why do you have animals in the back there? A squirrel knows how to tell a good seed from a rotten one. It's actually picky about what it keeps. Now, Jen, this is cool, but what does this have to do with you? It's everything, you guys, because your mind works the exact same way. Every single day, just like the squirrel, you're collecting acorns, you're collecting conversations, thoughts, social media posts, podcast comments. You're collecting beliefs, and some of them are good. You know, they provide encouragement, wisdom, experience, but those are the good seeds. But some of them are rotten, right? Things like, hey, clients aren't spending money anymore. Booth rent gives more freedom, or my team doesn't care as much as I do. You know, those are actually the rotten acorns. And if you're not careful, you'll bury them in your mind and call them truth. You know, you've heard this before, but what you believe, you become. So when you collect someone else's limiting belief, you start to live out their limitations. That's actually called propaganda and not truth. And propaganda spreads like wildfire in salons. You've seen it before. You know, the one teammate that's always negative. You know, they start planting seeds like, hey, do we really need another meeting? Everyone's tired of these promotions. And before long, those weeds choke out the growth. You know, the squirrel teaches us something powerful. Be careful what you collect because whatever you store becomes your soil. You know, once upon a time, I was in a growth session with one of our educators, and she looked at me and said, you know, Jen, guest experience is really important to me. I just don't see how I can schedule a guest every 45 minutes. So she was working with a co stylist. And then she added, hey, you know what, Jen? Things have changed. You know, it's not like it used to be when you did hair. I smiled because, you know, last time I checked, the color wheel hadn't changed. And you guys, I still can touch hair here or there. I have the experience. You know, so in that moment, I said, hey, wait, did you realize that's not a fact? That's a belief you created or collected. And where did that come from? And she paused, her eyes got wide, she sat up a little taller, and she said, oh my gosh, someone told me that a few months ago, and I took it on as a truth. And I said, exactly, you just picked up someone else's acorn. You see, one unexamined thought, one tiny rotten acorn, can grow into a forest of limitations. So the lesson is this: guard what you collect because your mind isn't a storage unit, it's a garden. And what you plant today is what you'll live in tomorrow. All right, so now your squirrel's been collecting all these acorns. Let's talk about the second C of the mind, which is actually clarify. So we've got collect, the next C is clarify. And to help you remember it, let's take a look at this owl. Now, most people think that owls are known for wisdom, but their real power is vision. They can see clearly in the dark when everything else is blurry. They can actually spot a mouse for like, I think it's over half a mile away, even in complete darkness. You know, that's your mind. Out of everything your squirrel collects, every conversation, every experience, every belief, your owl actually decides what to focus on. And guys, here's the crazy part. Whatever your owl chooses to focus on actually grows. So if your owl is focused on, hey, guests don't want to spend more money, or there's no one to hire, or people just aren't loyal anymore, then guess what? That's all you will see. Your owl will start hunting for proof of those fears and it'll find it. But if your owl focus on, hey, guests trust us, or I'm looking for the perfect addition to our team, or how can we elevate our guest experience? Now your actions shift, your confidence changes, and suddenly your results explode. Because what your owl clarifies, your actions amplify. And you guys, actions, they actually shape growth and income. We once upon a time had this guest named Caden. He had been to our salon 51 times. So we had done some things right if he came back 51 times. Same service, same experience, had never once bought product. Then on his 52nd visit, he was booked with one of our new beauty pros. And she came up to me nervous and said, Jen, what guard should I use? I just smiled because this wasn't about a guard. It wasn't about a clipper. It was actually about clarity. So I said, hey, let's not make it about the guard. Let's make it about Caden, his face shape, his lifestyle. Let's figure out what makes him feel like the best version of himself. And that one moment shifted everything. For the first time after 51 visits, Caden left with product in his hand. Not because we sold it, but because we saw him differently. See, when you clarify what really matters, the guest, not the guard, you start changing results. And that's the power of the owl. What you clarify changes what you see, and what you see changes your success. So if your results aren't where you want them to be, it's not because you're missing something, it's because your owl is focused on the wrong thing. So if you shift your focus, you change your outcome. All right, so you've collected like a squirrel, you've clarified like an owl, but none of that matters if you don't do the next part. So the third C is actually commit. And I have one of the most powerful animals on the planet. Look at it coming up. Look at that beautiful elephant. One of the most powerful animals on the planet, the elephant. But here's what's wild about elephants is they actually walk up to 25 miles a day. Could you imagine? They don't rush, they don't panic, they just keep moving. And once an elephant chooses a path, it rarely strays from it. Storms don't stop it, heat doesn't slow it down. It just keeps going step by step, mile by mile until it gets there. And that's what commitment looks like. That's what success looks like. And your mind works the same way. Once your squirrel has collected the information, so if our squirrel has collected the information, you have your owl has clarified the focus, and then your elephant here decides what to do with it. And here's the truth that most salon owners miss. Your success doesn't come from what you know. It comes from what you commit to doing, even when it's uncomfortable. Because collecting and clarifying, that's mental, but committing, that takes muscle. If your elephant commits to small thinking, you'll keep playing small. If your elephant commits to avoiding awkward conversations, you'll keep skipping the conversations that'll grow your team, retain your team, or change your business. But if your elephant commits to service, to systems, to teaching your team to prescribe products, to give 100% every single guest, then you'll build unstoppable momentum. And that's how seven-figure salons are built. Not from big leaps, but from daily commitments, repeated consistently. Repetition is the mother of mastery. And that's what elephants understand. They don't sprint, they endure. They don't get distracted, they decide. And they don't stop, they stay the course. Because commitment is the bridge between belief and breakthrough. So here's the truth. Commitment isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Keep on going. Your elephant doesn't need to sprint, it just needs to keep walking. It's step by step, system by system, guest by guest. Because when your squirrel collects the right beliefs, Your owl clarifies the right focus. And again, your elephant commits to the right action. You don't just change your mind. In those moments, you actually renovate it. And when you renovate your mind, your entire salon follows. So let's bring this home, you guys. So we know that your squirrel, it collects the thoughts. Your owl clarifies the focus. Your elephant commits to action. I just want to do a truncate. Commits to action. Together, they build the belief system that runs your salon. Because here's the truth: your salon will never rise higher than your mindset inside it. And you can have the best systems in the world, but if your team squirrel is collecting fear, if their owl is focused on problems, and if their elephant is committed to excuses, you'll stay stuck at the same level. And that's why transformation doesn't start with skill set. It starts with the mindset. Now, I get it. Most of you are already saying, that sounds great, but I don't have time to teach this, Jen. I want my team to think differently, but I'm running the business. And you guys, that's exactly why we created Million Dollar Beauty Pro. We work on those animals for your team. We help beauty pros collect better thoughts, clarify stronger beliefs, and commit to the habits that grow them and your business, even when you don't have the time to. Because when your team's mind shifts, your results do too. And you don't have to do it all yourself. You just have to lead them to the right environment for transformation. So if you're ready to build a team that thinks like millionaires, serves like leaders, and sells with heart, text PRO to 469-283-5590. Again, that's PRO, PRO, to 469-283-5590. And let's start renovating the minds that move your salon forward. Because the truth is, when the mind shifts, the money follows. All right, I'll see you in the next video.